Hello duelists, and I am back from the 2025 Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship. Now, if you've been living under a rock, you may or may not have seen the events unfold over the weekend, as every single match that occurred in Paris was visible on the Master Duel client, and many of them were streamed on Twitch. With that said, you guys may already know how the tournament went for myself and my team. In fact, the title probably gives it away. We didn't do very well. In the past 2 years, we have been able to make it out of the group stages and then make it to the finals where, of course, in the first year of the World Championship, we got second, and then in the second year, we got first. This year, however, in the group stages, we were unable to get out. You can see here the matrix of our matchups. We got 5th place, and it's not like terribly worse than what even came before. For example, 3rd is only 1 match win more than us, but we were unable to really make it that close or do well altogether. You see, we got swept 3 different times, and that's a shame. It obviously means that Team 7 is knocked out of contention for next year's tournament, and if we want to go back, we will have to requalify. Although I will say that the trilogy of Team 7 probably ends here, as now we'll likely each go in our own ways to play with other friends, because as much as it is fun teaming with the same team over and over again, got other friends I want to team with as well. And I know the same goes for Ray and Ryan. I said this on Twitter. It's like Naruto, the original anime. That was year 1. Good, but couldn't close it out 2nd place. And then 2nd year was Shippuden, peak, and we got 1st. And then you guys know what comes after Shippuden, right? It's Boruto. And I joked about it last year, how this means we're going to shit the bed in year 3. And unfortunately, my predictions come to pass. And Team 7 did not face Knife Hunters in the finals, obviously, like the last 2 years. They also shit the bed, also with that 2-3 record. They did a little better than us, but no, they went 3-2, right? No, they went 2-3. Okay, yeah, it did not matter. They also got 5th. Obviously, it did not matter too much. We knew they were out by round 4, same time as us. The round 5 went 0-9, and they went 3-6, whatever. Didn't matter because the match was over. Regardless, let's talk a bit about what happened at the World Championship. So, for a bit of a format breakdown for those of you who are uninformed, the Master Duel World Championship involves teams of 3 players. So, of course, my team was Raymond Dai, Ryan Yu, and myself, with Ryan Yu helming the captain for the 2nd year in a row. Then we each get to play 2 decks. You don't have to use both, but you do get to bring 2. And then with the 6 decks of each player, you share a card pool. So what that means is, if you are playing Malice, and you have 3 Dormouse in your deck, then no other player can use Dormouse. And this goes for the balance as well. So for a card that is limited to 1, like Predoplant, Verte, and Anaconda, only 1 copy can be used between all 6 decks. Furthermore, 3 cards can be designated as shared cards. So these shared cards would kind of bypass the restriction, and each player could use them in each of their decks at their normal balance restriction. So it's pretty common to play Maxi and Ash Blossom as the main 2, and then the 3rd copy or 3rd shared card does usually differentiate. We used Copy of the Grave the last 2 years. This year we used Molcharmi Fualos. We felt like it would give us a better chance going 2nd in what is otherwise a very go first dominated format. If you look at the stats, you'll see that going first for either Malice or Rizal was incredibly favored. And even with Fuwa, it doesn't always save you, but it gives you a little bit of a fighting chance, especially as lets you, for one, weaken their field because they won't full combo you, but then draw into the other non-engine cards that help you break the field a little bit stronger. And you'll see that come into play with my decks when we get to that shortly. And then the other reason we didn't pick Call by the Grave, like we did the last 2 years, is when we chose Call by the Grave in last year, for example, it was good going 2nd. And what it means is overall that Call by the Grave was still good going 1st, obviously, it had that application there, but you didn't get frustrated when you lost the coin flip with Druid, which is what we were scared of this year, and that's why we chose not to share it. I think it's worth noting that I believe only one other team did this, and that was Fallout Galera, but I think every other team chose Call by the Grave, and that could also be a reason why stats skewed so much for going 1st. I think anyone who's played Master Duel lately will tell you how go first heavy this meta is, with Malice being the #1 perpetrator in this offense. Not thrilled with the format. Not trying to like diminish my loss or make it out like the players who won didn't deserve it, but yeah, I'm not a fan, and many others share this opinion. So that brings us to deck selection. Now, for this tournament, we knew that we would essentially have a Rizal player and a Malice player. Those are the two best decks. It's kind of non-negotiable. Every single team had both a Rizal deck and a Malice deck. There is one team that did not play Malice as often as everyone else, the Fala Galera team, but those two decks were a somewhat constant, where those were the main focuses of the tournament for sure, and the clear tier 1 decks. But what that meant is that you needed a third deck or something else for other players to use. And this was actually the same as last year, where we decided Yubel and Fire King were by far the best decks, and they needed another deck a tier lower to kind of round it all out. Ironically, the name that this player has been given by several testing groups is the Dog. They're the Dog player because they get the deck that is clearly worse than the others, and the win rates of these players will also reflect that if you go across the statistic page, which you'll find in the comment section linked below. And the reason for that is that Ray had kind of locked in way before that he was going to play Malice. The deck has been practicing for a long time. He felt he wouldn't be confident enough to switch off of Malice, so we stuck with that. Arguably, we should have had Ryan play Malice if Ray could have switched to a different deck in time, but didn't feel that would happen. Now, why switch Ryan to that deck? That's because of leader tiebreakers. So you can see in those group stages, sometimes the score of teams are the same. How do you decide who's second, who's first, who's third, etc., to advance from group stages? Well, what happens is you compare the number of round wins first, then you compare the number of game wins, and then you compare the number of games the leader of each team has won, the captain. So in our case, Ryan is the captain. Therefore, if we can have the best deck, then it can matter. And it did matter in the other group, not for us, but for Team Chiba Corp. They were able to make it through because their team captain had a strong number of wins, Joey. And he did well with Malice over the weekend. So we wanted to give Malice to Ryan if we could have, but given that we couldn't, the second best deck is Rizal. No brainer, obviously they're two big decks. So he got Rizal and left me with the Dog deck. So deciding the next deck that I was going to play, there were two main candidates for me. I could play Memento or Mermail. We felt like these were the two decks that were clearly the next strongest in power. They were really good when they went first, so you could still beat essentially anything you played against. And your non-engine could reflect you in an okay way to beat the better decks. Those are the two to look at. And other options that people consider for this tournament that I truthfully don't agree with include stuff like Voice's Voice, Tenpai, Telement, and Branded. I thought these decks all had other flaws to them. Tenpai, obviously, powerful deck, but very easy to play around when you know you're up against it, especially when you can switch to a second deck that beats Tenpai. And you'll see why that matters shortly. And the other decks we just felt weren't powerful enough. They had too many flaws. Or in the case of Blue Eyes deck that is strong, when you're sharing staples, Blue Eyes needs like Veilers, Imperms, and these hand traps to function. But then you have to share those amongst the other two decks. It becomes kind of problematic. How do you make this all work? So ideally what you can do is you have a hand trap deck. Like the two main decks are hand trap decks, and the third deck is a breaker based deck. That way you're not fighting for staples amongst themselves. You can build full power decks, or at least close to. And this was the same sort of approach we took last year, and that's why my tier deck last year had no hand traps effectively. We decided that with our experience in the TCG, Memento has a decent Rizal matchup. When it goes first and it gets to play, it should be almost impossible to lose. Rizal cannot grind versus Memento at all, and Memento went second, it could win. Not guaranteed, but it could play the non-engine to support it. It naturally plays cards like Eclipse and Drop it very well, and the Goblin Micro cards work very well in addition to help you out. Now, that being said, the more Master Duel trend of summoning Baguska does hurt this deck significantly more than Detonator does, so it doesn't thrive as much as it did in the TCG, as well as people knew as Memento, and then they didn't even have to think about it. Baguska was getting summoned. So it was not maybe as strong as it may look like in TCG matches, like with Pascal's YCS win, but we still felt Memento was a good choice. So that was going to be my main deck. But then we needed something for Malice, because Memento versus Malice, not great. Going second is really hard versus Malice, and even if you have your breakers and your mulch armies, it's not going to be enough. They just completely rip you to shreds. And going first against them is still fine if you get to play, but the best hand traps against you are cards like Ash and Impulse, so we wanted something else to go up against Malice. And my core idea is I have Memento to go versus the two other players, and versus the Malice player, I switch to another deck. And could have some flexibility, but that was the general idea I was going for. So that meant that because I was going to build an anti-Malice deck, that Lancias would find their way into this strategy. Then I had to figure out what the best thing was. Originally, you started off with Crystron, which is the deck that Pack ironically ended up bringing to pair with his Memento deck. However, we decided that it wasn't good enough and went for something else instead. Went for Mermail, because if you made your opponent pass on a half field thanks to cards like Fu or Maxi, Mermail would destroy Malice. Mermail would be broken when it went first. It also beat any FTK decks I played against, or board breaker decks that Memento may have a hard time against. What it meant is between Lancias and Fuas, I'd be pretty comfortable against Malice. Wouldn't be crazy, but it'd be fine. And then going first, I'd be super well off. And then I used to play cards like Barrier Statue as well to make it so that almost any matchup can be winnable. And then also the advantage of this meant I had the third and fourth best deck, and they're both different from each other. So now if I was uncomfortable with the matchup with Memento into something, even if the Mermail deck wasn't planned to be played in that matchup, it's a very strong deck. It could be fine. And this happened in the World Championship when I played against the Voices player. And I'm like, I'll just switch to Mermail. It's honestly really good in this matchup still, so should be okay. Mermail's a good deck. And wasn't really much to argue with that. So let me show you guys the deck lists here real quick. So I'm not going to show you guys my teammates' deck lists. For some reason, Master Client deleted them, and I'm not going to go too in-depth into stuff anyways. I'll show you Ryan's deck list because that matters. So this was the Memento deck. Now, if you watch me play this, you'll see that I unfortunately bricked a lot. Maybe I needed more starters, but I felt like I needed to have non-engine as well to compete going second, because Bagooska is a problem. And you can see my deck reflects that with the 6 Bagooska outs here. And the Goblin Bikers do act as both non-engine and engine in cases, which is why I felt like this would be plenty for starters here. And the Charm is obviously great versus a lot of matchups. 1 Dark Blade and only 2 Aang Witch, again, because you're making up the normal summons here with Goblin Biker cards. So one other thing to consider when building your decks is you have to share Typhons and SPs as well. So only 3 Typhons and 3 SPs across all your decks. And that is why there's no Typhon here, but SP is. This one is more important, obviously, in this deck than the Typhon is. I felt I'd be fine without it. You can see that my Mermail deck was also pretty straightforward. There were very few concessions that had to be made for the deck building rule. It's built to beat Malice. The Gamma Seals exists that in case my opponent wants to go for a full Malice combo under Fu or Maxi, I had cards I could draw into that would beat them. Because here's the thing with this deck people don't realize. Mermail may seem like it can do infinite things, but it actually runs out of pushes really fast if you know how to play against it properly. Especially if that means like not just popping the first prince that's summoned. So what that means is if you don't have another way to break through the field, sometimes they can just beat you by going full combo. And this is important to note. One of the things we could play for Malice are like Meowls, but it would have to come at the cost of something else like the Gamma Seals. And again, you need to be able to draw into stuff. Otherwise, you could still just lose anyways. The Statue and Coelacanth here are here because they bait Impulse, they work so you can play main phase 2, and they're just very good into Malice in general. Statue specifically being very good, especially when you get Maxi to Fluid, so no regrets about that. Then the Ice Jade is a powerful card to summon into your opponent's field. So they have Crypt or Banish up, and they're like holding for an impactful disruption. And you can make Agerine, and it prevents banishing, which is actually pretty useful. Then there's also 42 cards in this deck. Now the reason for being 42 cards is that it matches up with Memento, because obviously when I queue my deck up, I don't want my opponent to know immediately what I'm playing, because that'll let them play around stuff super easy. The tournament, obviously, we only played 12 games. It did not go great. 4 of those 12 games I passed doing very little. Once with Mermail, where I passed to a single Ash. Once with Memento, when I passed to a single Veiler. And twice with Memento, where I just straight up passed. It's a shame because, obviously, as you can see by the win rate of other players that went first, you need to be able to convert when you start. And I was not doing that. I wanted both these decks people to go second as well, especially because I'm playing a weaker deck. And I didn't think I was really compromising consistency, so perhaps I was wrong, but also could have just been bad variance. I really don't think my deck was that ill-equipped to go second. The other games, I'd scrape together wins going second. I would win going first sometimes. So it wasn't all for nothing, but yeah, going second is going to be hard, and the stats showed it. There were games where even if I Fuwood against like the Memento player, Gabe, in round 1, I would still just lose to a card like Droll. Or against Rizal, I was able to break the field and set up plays, and then got nibbed. Not always something you can do, and that's the hard part about the format. It was definitely a deck building challenge. But that brings us to the decks of Ryan and Ray. So we felt pretty strongly that both Rizal and Malice are just very strong, and you really need to switch them off. When you're going to switch them off is when you're playing against a deck that is predatory against you. So, like in Ray's case, a deck built like Mermails, or in the Rizal case with Ryan, a deck that is built to solo Rizal. So board breaker decks like Tempai, and what's been popular and rated as Crooked Cook as well. There's like no outs to it. So that's how we designed our secondary decks. Now, Ray had a Mermail deck with cards like Diamond Dust and Arias for DDG to stop graveyard heavy decks, as well as grind game decks, because Lab excels in both of those situations with the way we built it. And we didn't really get to use it that much, but it was cool. And the more exciting one was Ryan's deck. Pretty much on the way back from Vancouver, Ryan and I were talking. We're like, what does he need as a second deck? Because in reality, there's not much that would need to happen. And we decided the only really thing we need our second deck to do for Ryan is to FTK, because we want to be able to beat these dumb decks, Crooked Cook and Tempai, although Tempai was the main thing here, because Tempai can be built to beat Rizal pretty effectively. And at some point we said, all right, fuck it, we'll see how they do. We'll try Arcanum Force as well, and we're hesitant to see if it will work. And by the time I landed from my flight from Vancouver, like on the way home, Ryan and Ray were in Discord testing Arcanum Force, and I hopped in, and he's like, this shit is insane. It's like 100% FTK raise. So Ryan ran with the idea of Arcanum Force, and this is the list he came up with. And it's pretty intuitive. It is just built to FTK. And because you have so many standards with Fiendsmith and Horus cards, that oftentimes you can make cards like Apo or Caesar or Elf to play on hand traps as well. So you actually can beat decks that have hand traps as long as you win the roll. It's not meant to be a real deck. It's not built to go second. But when it goes first, it can FTK consistently. The cool things to know here are Zelantis and M7, which can both be used to take your opponent's monsters and give them back to you, because Hierophant gives your opponent the monster and then bounce it. I guess if you're not familiar with Arcanum Force, Light Barrier lets you control coin flips, and Arcanum Force the World says when it's summoned, flip a coin. If you get heads, it gains the effect that during the end phase you contribute 2 monsters to skip your opponent's next turn. The idea is you have a bunch of ways to set this up and summon it and guarantee it's going to be a heads, and then your opponent's turn is skipped, and then they die. It's very simple, it's very elegant, and it's very fun. And I'm very happy we got to at least resolve this once in a world, though I wish we did have some more success with it. The idea is even if our opponent knows we have it, and then becomes a deterrent for them not to play decks like Rizal in the future, or Tempai. Then it'll become they have to make a call, and if we can read them, then we will. And this happened against Chris, for example, where we thought, okay, he knows we have this, he's going to queue his Malice deck against us, not his Tempai deck. And we were right. Still lost the game. Ryan queued his Rizal deck and still lost. But it ultimately did show that our idea worked in somewhat concept or in theory. And yeah, that was the tournament. Eliminated fairly on in the first stage, group stage. By round 5, we knew we were effectively eliminated. When we went into round 5 against FCG, we knew that we needed to win like almost all the games, 8-1 or 9-0. And then even then, we only had a small chance. When we saw our hands in the first round of the last set, we knew it's over, can't 3-0. And we kind of just accepted our fate, which is a shame. That's okay. Yu-Gi-Oh! It's impossible to win every game. It does suck, though, putting in all the work. Congratulations to Team Ragnarok. Now, did walk away with the victory. Close friends, myself, and my teammates. So it was very nice to see the friends walk away with a success. Now, how was the rest of the World Championship? Because that matters as well. I'm sure you guys saw all the spectacles. Let me tell you all about it. So the way Konami works is they'll fly you in a couple days before. So Wednesday in this case, although I chose to fly an extra day earlier. They put you up in a hotel. And it's cool because they treat it like a work conference area where they have an entire area kind of cordoned off of the hotel, which is for players only and for staff or whatever, for us to hang out with snacks and drinks and whatever, where the food is always going to have, so we have free meals anytime we want. It's where they do any media stuff. So they do interviews with us. They take pictures of our team, which all happen as well. And it feels a lot more glamorous than a normal Yu-Gi-Oh event. Most of that is what happens during the days leading up to Worlds. We did a player tour this time, which we didn't do last year. Have in the past, though. Took us to locals. I mean, you may have seen a picture on social media. It was just, we ended up cubing there because there's nothing to do. I don't know why they take us locals. They took us to Notre Dame, which is actually like a 5-minute walk from the venue, so I don't know why we bussed there. And then after that, they take us to the tech check setup, so making sure that our stations for Master Duel is all good. It was definitely a bit worse than last year because the acoustics were in a way where the acoustics were too good, so you could hear other people talking. You have to be too quiet for yourselves. As well as didn't give us gaming chairs like last year. They gave us like these school chairs, which obviously are not very good, but it wasn't terrible. And the venue itself was okay. It wasn't awful, but wasn't brilliant either. And it was still a fun, enjoyable experience. And Konami puts in work, so I don't like to just endlessly shit on them without need. When I have a critique, I will say it, but it was solid. Now, I did say that I went a day early. I also stayed a day late. When you travel across the world to play Yu-Gi-Oh, I think it's a wasted opportunity to do nothing else, especially to a place that's foreign to you haven't been to. I hadn't been to Paris since I was a little kid, and now as an adult, I want to do see it myself. I wish I took more videos and footage, but I'll have some stuff for you here. I did go a day early, took the train to Bayeux in Normandy to see some World War II sites. Just me and Ray went to see Omaha Beach, Pointe du Hoc, the bunker there, and then Reagan gave a famous speech as well. Then we also went to Juno Beach. Now, if you're unfamiliar with those two beaches, those beaches are the landing sites for D-Day, the invasion in World War II. With Omaha Beach being one of the US landing sites, and Juno Beach being the Canadian landing site. So Ray and I got to pay respects to our respective countries. And it was a very pretty area as well. Seeing a different part of France was very nice. Got to try different foods. For example, this galette, which I always thought meant cookie in French, but apparently in this part of France is more like a buckwheat crepe, which was really freaking good, actually. Probably the best thing I had all trip. Like Emmental cheese with fried egg, caramelized onions. Oh, these caramelized onions were so good. And then chicken breast. It was so good. And yeah, that was just a small one-day trip. Then we headed back to Paris. One of the meals at the dinner, I wasn't vibing with the free economy dinner, so we went out to a souffle specialty restaurant, Racamier. Got a Henry the Fourth or Henry the Eighth, I can't remember what number it was, souffle, which was cheese and mustard. It was actually pretty good. And then we shared some dessert souffles of caramel, fleur de sel, pistachio, and chocolate, which were good, but not as good as, honestly, the savory souffles. And then after the event, we went to Clash in Paris, which I then got denied entry into at first because my UDS ring wasn't deemed a weapon. It was stupid because people bring wrestling belts in, but whatever. So I missed the first two fights, which was dumb. But eventually, after going back to the hotel and then back to the venue, I got into see Clash of Paris. I'd never been to WWE before, but I had been to Lucha Libre and New Japan Pro Wrestling. It was cool. The vibes are hype. And you can definitely tell a European crowd because they chant more and there's more swearing. And it reminded me of when I went to a football game in Chelsea, or in London for Chelsea. You effing suck, except they were not censoring it like I was. And it was very cool to be there. I'm a very casual WWE watcher. I watch with friends pretty much when they have it on in like the store and we're hanging out. So I'm familiar with a lot of the characters or actors, I guess to say that, but not super up to date with all the plot lines. Still had a fun time though. Like I recognized a lot of people walking past. Got to see John Cena, for example, and that was very cool. I know Ray went alive when he saw Rhea Ripley, King Gunnar. And then the only other thing that we did in that time after Worlds is on the Monday morning right afterwards, Vincenzo Orfino, one of the other players who got top 4 for Brothos, myself, Ray, and Darren, and Ruggles and his girlfriend, I know a weird group, all went to the Louvre together. That was a ton of fun as well. Got to see Mona Lisa, of course, as well as a bunch of other cool things, the crown jewels, the big French stuff. I got to see a painting that I've liked for a while by this artist named John Martin. It's called Pandemonium. But yeah, I've seen his artwork before, and it reminds me of like, I don't know, Star Wars-esque in the grand scenery and that such. So it's cool. But the other artists didn't get to see. I know the Impressionist Museum is like Musée d'Orsay, and I never got to. I'll probably butcher the pronunciation though. I never got to go there. I'm a fan of surrealism, like Magritte, and I didn't get to see any stuff like that. But Louvre was still super cool, and happy I went. It was nice having an art guide in Ruggles who could tell me stuff, because obviously you guys know he's super into art. And yeah, I had a good time, and that was pretty much the rest of the trip. That was what we did on the back end. The extra day we spent was a Clash in Paris on Sunday, and then Monday Night Raw on Monday. And now we're back in Toronto, and have to requalify for the World Championship. Many people have asked me, do I see myself going through TCG or Master Duel? And Josh has iterated he wants to do TCG. I am not Josh, obviously. For me, I would play, if I had the choice, whichever format I felt was better at the time of Worlds. Obviously, that's idealistic, but this year it would have been TCG, last year Master Duel, and so forth. But that being said, overall, I don't have too much preference. And the goal is to qualify for Worlds, but I'm not fussed over which one I do. Because obviously, when I'm qualifying now, I'm not going to know which format it'll be by the time World comes around. So try qualify for both, and then if I am fortunate enough to have the choice of either or, we'll reach that point. But for now, I will be trying my ass off, and that means the Duelist Cup in a couple weeks. I will be eager to play, and hopefully we'll see you guys there. Now, expectations are not necessarily to win. Winning a Duelist Cup is incredibly hard, and I'm not Toski or Ryan Yu. But part of it is to practice and get better at those long distance marathon style tournaments, because I'm very TCG brained. I'm used to the Swiss, the single elim, the top cuts. I'm not used to long, grueling, endless duels. I have to get better at it, but that's part of learning, is just losing, learning, improving. So overall, I had a very fun time in Paris. Thank you to everyone else who made it so fun. All the friends I got to see, the Konami staff who were very helpful and made the experience overall enjoyable. Yeah, so I'm happy. Obviously not the result I wanted, and I know I'm here telling you guys Team 7 is over, we lost, but I am looking back with no regrets. I am happy with the 3 years my team had together, getting second, winning, and even this year. We had a ton of fun in all these locations traveling. We had fun playing, and I look forward to what the future holds for all of us. So thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys at Worlds next year too.